Didn't notice you there. What's that I'm reading? Why, it's a book on Vietnam. What else would I spend my free time doing? Looking at the stock market? Checking social media? Maybe fixing my deep-rooted emotional problems? No! Why would I want to when I have this fine piece of literature in my possession? Ah, Vietnam. That sure was a time. Now, I can only think of two things when I hear the word Vietnam. That is, Lieutenant Dan's missing legs and the Cold War, of course. The Cold War was an extensive period beginning after World War II, involving increased tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union. It brought on new national security tactics, worked for the containment of the good old communism, and my favorite, there was a constant threat of nuclear proliferation. Although the Cold War was only waged less than a century ago, we seem to hear in the history books and among our peers a glorified ideal of what actually happened. But fear not, ladies and gentlemen, I am here on a video documentary crusade of sorts to take back the holy land of factual common knowledge and tell you why everything you thought you knew about the Cold War is actually wrong. Commonly used to describe the Cold War is the long peace. It sounds nice in retrospect, but we're forgetting what actually happened. The characterization of the Cold War as a long peace, a term coined in the 1980s by historian John Lewis Gladys, makes sense only if we overlook the devastating wars that resulted from this period of peace. Data compiled by the Human Security Report Project shows that the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the succession of wars in the Middle East, civil wars in Central America and Southern Africa, and the Soviet war in Afghanistan resulted in the deaths of millions of people, most of whom were civilians. Large numbers also died under regimes in Latin America and Africa that were backed by Western governments due to these Cold War pressures. So basically, in short, referring to the Cold War as a long peace is not only disrespectful to the millions of souls lost within this hypothetical peace, but it's simply not true. The next problem found within the history of the Cold War is the infamous space race. Now, I'm not saying that we never put a man on the moon, because we certainly did. Or did we? But I can't get into conspiracies right now, so as far as we're concerned, we did put a man on the moon. The real problem with the space race is the idea of it itself. In movies, literature, and even some vague memories, many people remember the space race as being a single goal that unified the American people and bolstered patriotism. But the facts prove otherwise. Here's a scenario for you. Remember when George W. Bush vowed to put another man on the moon, and in 2020 we'd have someone on Mars? Well, the nation responded to this by glancing around and saying, "Hey dude, we kinda have problems already." And so shortly after this, the Bush administration completely abandoned the project. Well, if you want to know what life was like during the space race, think of this scenario. Despite the rosy picture the media has painted of the space race, in hindsight, the race to the moon was surprisingly and consistently unpopular within the American media and the public throughout the 60s. 3 years before the moon landing, Newsweek announced that the US space program is in decline, and it seemed like an embarrassing self-indulgence, next to Vietnam and national poverty growing. According to a Gallup poll, most Americans polled throughout the 1960s thought that the space race wasn't even worth the money being wasted on it. So now you think, oh, well, the doubters must have felt pretty stupid after Neil Armstrong stuck an American flag in the moon and did a cute little touchdown space dance. Actually, even after Neil Armstrong's giant leap for mankind, only a lukewarm 53% of the public believed that this historic event had even been worth the cost, proving that this space race has been cultivated into our American history to seem like the greatest unifying factor of the Cold War, which is, again, untrue. Although I could go on and on about misconceptions and myths of this period, I fear I'll certainly lose your interest. So I'll leave my audience with this. Next time you think of Armstrong planting the red, white, and blue on the surface of the moon, always remember that the time and money used for his permanent footsteps to be placed on that surface was the government ignoring the will of its American people and failing to fulfill its duty to respect their opinions. But the most important fact that I want you all to remember is that the Cold War did prove to be a trying time for the United States, and did bring about much change. But just because troops were never deployed and war was never officially declared between these two countries, it doesn't mean that this was a time of peace. Millions of lives were lost in this global conflict, and continuing to believe an ideal that refuses to acknowledge this is simply wrong. So, thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to tune in to the next episode, and I will see you later.